Welcome to New York's number 2 sports show. The Yankees take 2 of 3 from the Seattle Mariners and finish their West Coast trip 4-2, heading into the Subway Series in the Bronx against the Mets. So Yankees improved to 25-18, and kind of starting from the end of the series, Aaron Judge is the one who, of course, hits just a monster homer in the 8th inning to give the Yankees a 3-2 lead, and they would win by that 3-2 score. I mean, had a lot going on in this series. Game 2 was a low-scoring extra inning loss for the Yankees, where they went 0 for 14 runners in scoring position. I believe 0 for 10 in the last 3 innings of action. And the Yankees really this year, it's been bad. And in previous years, as far as on the road in extra innings, not being able to get that run, the ghost runner in at a bare minimum, has been a major problem for them. Not going to harp on that too much within this episode, but we're going to, of course, discuss it from game 2. Game 1, Yankee offense kind of picked up where they left off in Sacramento against the A's, but all I can think about when I think about that game, sadly, is Oswaldo Cabrera sustaining a very gruesome ankle injury that ended up placing him on the injured list. I would have to believe that he's probably out for the season. Nothing's confirmed yet. We don't know anything official as far as that. He hasn't had surgery yet. They're still trying to figure things out, but it didn't look good, and you felt terrible for him. He was in a ton of pain. They had to, take him out in an ambulance, and just one of the more likable guys on the team, from what you can tell. Just in some ways, kind of a fan favorite, considering like the stature of what Oswaldo Cabrera is. Because look, he's a utility player. He is certainly not one of the best players on the team by any means, but one that, always has a smile on his face and has just been very likable since he was called up in 2022. So that was extremely unfortunate and sad, and put kind of a somber note on what was an otherwise, good game 1. But look, Seattle, they pitch well, if nothing else. And I do think that when all is said and done, they will definitely be in the playoff conversation. Now, whether that's winning the AL West or the wild card, I tend to think that they will be in those few teams that are battling it out for a playoff spot in the American League. And look, the American League, especially the American League East, really is not performing well at all. And that puts the Yankees in a decent spot as we sit in mid-May with plenty of season to go. We're basically just over the 25% mark, just over a quarter of the season at this point. So a lot of action remains, but you certainly can't hate the landscape of the American League East. I mean, really, as I'm recording this, the only other team that's even at 500 in the American League East is the Red Sox. And, after this recording's over, they might be under 500. So that's just where it's at right now. But going back to the Oswaldo injury, what ends up happening is DJ LeMahieu was activated, and he made his debut in the majors this season. And originally it was I think it was probably going to be Bibas that was going to be the one that likely would have been sent down. Maybe Pablo Reyes, but I think probably Bibas, one of the two. And the Oswaldo injury kind of keeps those guys on the team, and with continuous roles at second and or third base. And so that's the transaction that happens there, where LeMahieu takes the spot of Oswaldo. But let's discuss game 1. And really, it's interesting because you had a really bad offensive output for game 2 and basically half of game 3. But yet there's still a lot of offensive stars to talk about. On the pitching side, we'll start out with Clark Schmidt. Clark Schmidt, a pretty good outing. He actually picks up his first win of the season. He's now 1-1, 6 innings, 3 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, and allowed a couple of solo homers. And the third run that he allowed was actually an inherited runner situation, where Mark Leiter Jr. was the one that kind of allowed that run. The point is that Clark, kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start in this game, but I would still qualify this as a pretty solid outing. And for Schmidt, I feel like he's still trying to find his sea legs. I feel like he's not quite where you want him to be, and the numbers aren't really great by any means for him, but I think that he'll round into form as a middle to back end of the rotation type guy that you can depend on to keep you in ball games. That is kind of the Clark Schmidt way. And that's what he did here is you can count on him for the most part to give you an outing where he'll allow 3 or less runs. He may not go deep into the game and he may not necessarily give you shutout ball, but he's pretty consistent in that. And so as far as the lineup goes, the Yankees scored 11 runs. And this was a matchup in their favor, just as far as the probable starters were concerned, because the Yankees were going up against um, right-hander Everson Hancock. And for Hancock, sorry, Emerson Hancock, excuse me, um, he actually started out well. And then as the game drew on, the Yankees got to him. And his final line is 5 innings, 8 hits, 7 runs, 4 walks, 5 strikeouts. He allowed 3 homers. Um, the Mariners have a lot of good starting pitching. They've been pretty hurt, though. Logan Gilbert is one of the guys that is hurt. Um, Bryce Miller just got placed on the injured list. And then there's another good righty that I got to get the name as it escapes me, and I'll think of it right away. George Kirby. Don't even have to look it up. George Kirby is the other one. So that's the thing as far as Seattle is concerned. And so they still have a couple of good starters. The Yankees faced Brian Wu and Luis Castillo, but Hancock was someone the Yankees needed to take advantage of, and they did. And the player that was the odd man out of this lineup was Jason Dominguez. Again, it's a rotation. And even though Dominguez really was very good in the Sacramento series offensively, he sits up for this one. But it's another situation where, and I guess I'm jumping ahead, where Trent Grisham makes his mark in that leadoff spot for the Yankees. I mean, it's really kind of quite remarkable what he's provided. And, it was every starter had a hit. And the ironically sad thing is that Oswaldo was the last one that got a hit, which led to him getting hurt at the end. But let's, kind of discuss the nitty gritty of it. And it started out with the Mariners taking the lead. In fact, the Mariners actually had the lead in all 3 games of the series. So count them as 2 Yankee comebacks, but really the first one, not so much. They were gritty, really in game 2 and 3, but 2, I don't want to give them too much credit, and we'll talk about that, but 3 definitely. And it would be Julio Rodriguez, who's also a rough start of this to the season, but he was impressive at the plate and in the field. At least, in game 3, he was. He made a great robbery of Trent Grisham, but we'll talk about what happened in game 1. But Rodriguez with a solo shot at 7th over the year off of Clark Schmidt to make it 1-0. But then in the third, Trent Grisham hits his 11th homer of the season to center field on a play that Julio Rodriguez actually could have made. It tipped off of his glove, went off the top of the wall, and went out. That ties it up at 1. Then at the bottom of the third, a quick response by the Mariners. Jorge Polanco, who's had a really, really good start to the year for Seattle, he hits his 10th homer of the year to make it 2-1. But then the Yankees explode for 6 runs in the 5th, and that's kind of what they've done. They've had these big innings. If there's really one big strength of this Yankee team, because they can be a little bit feast or famine. The offensive stats end up netting out to basically tops in the league in almost all categories. And a big reason for that is because they can really take it. When they have you, they have you. Like there's no stopping the Yankees. They have a lot of 5+ run innings. This is a 6 runner. And Trent Grisham is at it again. 12th homer of the year, also to center field. Like the home runs are impressive. Sure, he can pull them, but he can also end the dead center field. And that's what he does here. Second homer of the game, makes it 2-2. And then from there, you get a Paul Goldschmidt RBI single, a Cody Bellinger RBI single to make it 4-2. And then the big blow of the inning was an Austin Wells 3-run homer, his 8th homer of the year, make it 7-2. Austin Wells, the batting average is much than less to be desired. But the OPS actually isn't that bad. It's kind of interesting in some ways, even though Austin Wells, I don't think his strikeout numbers are all that high. I don't believe, but the 748 OPS is really fine. It's 30 points better than what he had last year, but the batting average is 213. So again, there's pop, there's homers, there's doubles, but certainly not hitting the way that Austin Wells, I think, is capable of it. Look, he's not going to be a world beater, but I think there could be more than that. But the good thing is it's the home runs that he's provided, and that made it 7-2 right there. That was a really big homer at that point. And Hancock was left in too long. By the time that Wells was up, he really should have been out of the game, but they left him in. Schmidt ends up jumping ahead a little bit, top of the seventh, and Hancock's out of the game by this point, and the Yankees tack on one more run. It would be a sac fly by Austin Wells to make it 8-2. So a 4 RBI game for Wells, um, and 28 RBIs, which is a really good number actually for Wells. Um, when you think about again, like what he hasn't really done a whole lot to me, but yet again, that OPS and the RBI count's pretty good. So that makes it 8-2. And then in the seventh, Schmidt starts and gives up a leadoff double to Rosarena, which eventually, with 2 outs, Mark Leiter Jr. gives up an RBI single to Dylan Moore, makes it 8-3. The Mariners kind of were clawing the way back a little bit. In the bottom of the eighth, off of Tim Hill, they get a little 1 out rally going, if you will. Mitch Garver as a pinch hitter walks, and then Cal Raleigh, who's had a really good year. It's his 13th homer of the year. This one the switch hitter hits one as a righty off of Tim Hill to make it 8-5. And then Devin Williams comes in for what, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think they were going for the 4 out save because at that point, Luke Weaver hadn't pitched in a while. So I think it was pretty much just to finish up the eighth, but we'll talk about what ends up happening. He finishes out the inning. Then the ninth inning is where things get somber, but not to start. Anthony Volpe hits a 2-run homer. His sixth homer of the year to make it 10-5. And then with 1 out, Oswaldo Cabrera singles. It's a hit by pitch for Peraza, a single for Grisham, sets up bases with a 1 out for Aaron Judge. And Aaron Judge hits a sac fly. And unfortunately, Oswaldo Cabrera gets badly hurt at a play at the plate where he tried to scurry away from the catcher, Cal Raleigh. And in doing so, Cabrera ends up he kind of stumbles a little bit and falls, and all of his weight goes on that left ankle. And it was, a pretty gruesome looking injury. He was in a ton of pain. You knew that something was wrong, obviously. As Waldo, really, he's a guy that in years where the Yankees had a lot of injuries, I don't really recall Oswaldo Cabrera having any IL stints. I could be wrong, but if it was very slight. So, he's a tough guy. And so you knew it was bad, and he was really in a ton of pain. And they had to take him out, on a stretcher and, put him out in an ambulance. And so Oswaldo, I hope we see him soon, but I'm afraid that it might be a while before he returns. But that did make it 11-5. So, and it was kind of interesting too, where even he crawled, like he actually didn't touch the plate. Raleigh wasn't near him, but he kind of crawled over, and even in the pain, he was able to just touch home plate. And so it kind of speaks to the type of person and player that Oswaldo Cabrera is. It's all hustle. And, again, wishing him the best. So 11-5 Yanks at that point. And then Ian Hamilton would be the one that would come in. I mean, because the score became a 6-run game. So no more Devin Williams. Luke Weaver was warming up, but Hamilton would finish it out. And the Yankees win it 11-5. And Hamilton, I will say, that was a good outing for him. He looked a lot better this series. And that's a good sign, because I thought Hamilton hadn't looked great in his previous outings. Game 2 ends up being Max Fried's, not his first loss to his ledger, but for the team. They were 8-0 when Max Fried starts. Now it's 8-1. And really, Max Fried, it was a grind for him. It wasn't one of his better outings, but yet even in a not so good Fried outing, 5 innings, 1 run. So the ERA goes to 1.11. So, still he hasn't allowed more than 2 runs in an outing. I'm glad he didn't get the loss. So he's still 6-0. But again, the Yankees do lose the game, and they were 0 for 14 runners in scoring position. It's kind of interesting. The Yankees have had a lot of success at Seattle. They really, really have, like, for a while now. I want to say, what is it? They're like 12-2 or 14-2, something like that, in their last however many series in Seattle. But there's been numerous times I can remember this type of game where it was a low scoring extra inning game that the Yankees lost. I could think of for sure at least one other one. I really do believe there was more than just that. The odd man out for this one was Ben Rice. He would come in for a pinch hit appearance. And for this one, LeMahieu was activated. He didn't start, but he would come in later. He would get his first at bat of the season in this game, but he wouldn't start. Peraza was at third. Bibas at second. The way I see it is it's kind of going to be somewhat split between LeMahieu, Peraza, and Bibas. I think Pablo Reyes, like, his role is pretty much what it's been. I don't really expect that to change a whole lot. He's going to kind of get the odd pinch hit. you know, come in a lopsided score, that sort of thing. But those other three, and I really think that I guess the one that really I think maybe benefits the most in some ways might be Peraza, but it's tough to say because Bibas would have, I think, lost a spot on the active MLB roster. And then there's the LeMahieu factor where like if he somehow performed, I think that he would then get the lion's share of opportunity. But that kind of, that's a wait and see situation. So I wanted to kind of just touch on the second base, third base thing. And that's before obviously Jazz Chisholm Jr. comes back, which I don't think it's going to be a bit before he comes back. Um, so Fried, 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 5 strikeouts. And for Seattle, it was Brian Wu. And Brian Wu has been very, very good for Seattle. And that was on display in this one. 6 1/3 innings, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. The Yankees' best chances in the first, where they were hitting him hard in the first, but only had a Cody Bellinger double to show for it. And I'll say with Cody Bellinger, um, it's kind of a mixed bag the way I see it with Bellinger. Right now, he's actually been a lot better lately. He is, I want to get it right. I think it might be a 10-game winning streak. Yeah, 10-game winning streak for Cody Bellinger. But yet there's still a lot left to be desired. I still feel like he's been in big spots and hasn't delivered. Again, I think when it's all said and done, Bellinger's going to get those numbers into a much better place, and he's gradually getting there. He is. So again, it's mixed feelings on Bellinger as far as the production, but it's certainly better than what it was. Um, so they get that double, but surrounding that, they hit Wu hard, but nothing to show for it. And then Wu settles down in a pretty big way. And the Mariners they don't necessarily get to Fried, but they work his pitch count. They really did grind him out. And they finally do get on the board in the fourth. After a leadoff single for Julio Rodriguez, it would be Cal Raleigh with an RBI double. And here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that if Trent Grisham took the perfect route that it even changes anything, but Grisham's defense has bothered me. As much as I think that he's been out of this world good offensively, like truly, he is one of the most dangerous hitters going right now in baseball. Like there is no question about it. That said, the defense, which I'm not really sure how it rates out as far as metrics are concerned. I know that obviously like he's known as a top-notch center fielder. I'm just saying I am not thrilled with what has been there. And I almost wonder if Cody Bellinger would be a better option in center. They're not going to make a change. You hope it gets better. It's just a thought that I have that down the line, I do worry in a big spot that Grisham may not give you exactly what you think you're getting in center field. So again, even if he takes the perfect route, this is probably still an RBI double. It was hit well, it went off the wall, makes it 1-0. But then Fried's able to get out of the rest of the inning. It wasn't easy, but he did it. And then he actually strikes out the side in the fifth. So he went in on a high note, which was good. And again, even when he's not at his best, he's still able to kind of work his way around. Then, because we're going to have kind of a lot to discuss, the bullpen does, up until it gets to Tim Hill, the bullpen does a great job. Fernando Cruz strikes out the side in the sixth. I'll mention it in the seventh. This is where it kind of gets a little bit frustrating. Gabe Spire, the lefty, comes in to replace Brian Wu after Wells hits a double off of Wu. Then Volpe walks against the lefty Spire. It's a double steal, actually, second and third, while Dominguez is up. And then Dominguez strikes out as a righty, and then Peraza strikes out. That's where you can kind of bring in those lefties in certain spots and really be effective against the Yankees, because Jason Dominguez as a righty, it's a completely different hitter. And I think, look, I want him to get reps to give him the best shot possible, but I wouldn't be surprised if there comes a point in his career sooner than later where it's decided that he might just be a lefty hitter only. I really feel like that is possible. And the reason I say this is because he's a very good lefty and a really bad righty. And then Peraza strikes out as well. So not a great job right there. Mark Lauder Jr. then gets the job done in the seventh with a couple of strikeouts, and he looked pretty good doing it. Matt Brash, the setup guy for the Mariners, pitches a scoreless eighth. And then in the bottom of the eighth, it's actually Luke Weaver, who hadn't pitched in a while. He was warming up the night before, but he comes in down by 1 of the eighth. He pitches a 1-2-3 with a couple of strikeouts. Then Andres Munoz is really one of the best closers in baseball. Comes on in the ninth. He didn't even pitch that badly, but the Yankees are able to squeak out a run. It's Paul Goldschmidt getting hit by a pitch. And he was a little bit of pain. He hit him in the hand. He was fine. He actually still second. And the weird thing is then he's pinch run for it. How many times can you think of a guy stealing a base late in the game, and then he gets pinch run for by Pablo Reyes? But that was a big steal by Goldschmidt because then Wells grounds out and it gets the runner over. He actually got lucky because he really should have been called on strike three, but the ump gave him one. But the ump was bad in this game. The home plate ump, who was, I believe, Mark Wagner, was horrible on both sides. Like it was there was no consistency. And then Anthony Volpe, runner on third, which is Reyes with one out. He hits a ground ball the first, and Dylan Moore charging and makes a bad throw home, and Reyes scores. So it goes down as a blown save for Munoz, and the Yankees tie it up. So that was the first time the Yankees had. Well, that's not even true. That was the second time they tied a game in the ninth inning. They did it against the Pirates as well, and in both cases they lost in extra innings. So that makes it 1-1, and then Volpe actually goes to second on the play. Then Dominguez strikes out looking, and that was where Boone gets ejected, where it was a low pitch. It shouldn't have been strike three. And, Boone was fired up, and then Peraza grounds out. So they tie it up, like I said. Then Luke Weaver pitches the knife. So Weaver goes 2 innings, scoreless. Then we go to the 10th. Carlos Vargas comes on, and here's where the ineptitude really rears its ugly head for the Yankees. DJ LeMahieu in his first at-bat strikes out swinging, and it definitely brought me back flashbacks to last year. Then Trent Grisham with a really bad at bat. Trent Grisham strikes out on what was very reminiscent to that Pittsburgh game where Cody Bellinger was up before Aaron Judge and ends up basically swinging at a pitch that was way out of the zone. That's exactly what happens here. And then Judge is intentionally walked. So Grisham, it was ball four. That was frustrating because it totally changed the inning, and then Bellinger flies out. But give Devin Williams credit about in the 10th. He's able to strand that runner. There was a sack bunt that led to a runner on third, one out, but Williams is able to get out of it. And so the Yankees have another chance in the 11th, and they don't get it done again. And it was Pablo Reyes that actually technically does get the job done, even though he pulled the ball. It was a risky run by Cody Bellinger, but he gets the third, one out, and then Austin Wells was bad at that. Austin Wells pops out. Then Volpe walks, and then Dominguez grounds out. So when you don't score in that top half inning on the road, which the Yankees all 5 times on the road this year with the ghost runner, they have not scored. That's recipe for disaster. And Tim Hill comes on, and Tim Hill's not, as much as I like Tim Hill, generally speaking, he's not the guy you want in extra innings. In extra innings, you want guys that have strikeout ability. That's not Tim Hill. And so Ben Williamson gets a single to make it first and third, no out. And then JP Crawford, lefty-lefty matchup down the left field line. It's fair. It's a walk-off single for the Mariners. They win 2-1. So a frustrating loss to the Yankees. Good on them to have tied the game. I'll give them that. But they do lose, and it ties the series up, leading to a rubber match for game 3. And the good thing for the Yankees, like, I would have made a bigger deal about that game if not for the fact I like the game 3 win. The game 3 win was really kind of a gritty, gutsy effort that was somewhat reminiscent actually to the Padres rubber win, which included, and the reason I guess I say that mainly is I guess the score type was similar, and you had a pinch hit tying home run late. In that game, it was Grisham in the 8th inning. In this inning, it was Goldschmidt, and that's the weapon thing. So off the bench, Paul Goldschmidt was the one that was the odd man out. Goldschmidt is a terror against lefties. That is such an advantage to have him. Look, obviously you want him in the lineup, but to have him in there as an option is big time. Like, it gives the Yankees different pieces when you can throw a Grisham or a Dominguez or a Rice or a Goldschmidt off the bench for someone that really, look, isn't that good. In this case, it was a Skara. In another case, it could be a Bibas or a Peraza or whoever. That's really big to have. But Will Warren gets it done again. And I feel bad because really it should have been no earned runs to his ledger. It ends up being a no decision, 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts. We'll get to the point that I'm talking about where it really should have been no earned runs against him. But Will Warren is certainly, the good thing here is like he's in this rotation, right? Because I think you hit a point where I didn't know what was going to happen. A couple more bad outings and he could have been out. He has now secured himself back into that rotation for sure. And the stuff is looking impressive. So liking what I'm seeing from him. Luis Castillo for the Mariners pitched well. 6 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. It starts out where Trent Grisham is robbed of a homer by Julio Rodriguez. That sucked because obviously he kind of got the better of Rodriguez in game 1 where it went off of Rodriguez's glove. This time Rodriguez it was one of the better robberies you'll see. So Grisham almost got his 13th homer, but not quite to be. And then the Mariners eventually take the lead in the third inning. And what I'm talking about is um, it was the first play of the inning where Leody Taveras reaches on a single. Originally, they ruled the error on LeMahieu, which that would have been incorrect. It wasn't LeMahieu's fault. It was really Ben Rice's fault. Ben Rice was too far over, and he needed to basically play it a little bit differently where he was going to be able to receive the throw from LeMahieu. He never got himself in position to do so, so LeMahieu threw it, and it leads to a collision between Rice and Taveras. So I'm not sure how you like. Warren is the one that ends up getting screwed because it really shouldn't have been a single. It should have been some type of error on Rice. But I digress. Eventually, where the inning could have been over, it leads to a bases loaded 2-out spot for Julio Rodriguez to hit a 2-run double to make it 2-0. And then Cal Raleigh lines out to Grisham. So, like, it could have gotten out of hand there. Warren got off to a fantastic start. And Warren, getting 9 strikeouts. He struck out like 5 of the first 6 batters. So he kind of cooled off as it went on, but I still felt like he finished strong as he went 5 innings. And, again, only allowed those 2 runs. And the Yankees, they're able to kind of get it going. And in the 6th inning, you get a 2-out double for Anthony Volpe and an RBI double for Jason Dominguez to make it 2-1. So Castillo's day is over. It was a combination of Tyler Matzik and Ian Hamilton. Matzik has been, pretty tough. It's been a tough watch so far, him as a Yankee. But Hamilton was able to get the flyout to end the inning. And then Paul Goldschmidt pinch hits for Ascara. And what does he do against the lefty Gabe Spire? He homers. His second pinch hit homer of his career, first since he was a rookie with the Diamondbacks. So that's where a good job by Aaron Boone utilizing Goldschmidt in that situation to tie it up at 2. So Warren off the hook. They make some changes where basically the whole bench is used by the time the bottom of the 7th rolls around. And then Hamilton pitches a 1-2-3 7th. Hamilton ends up getting the win, actually. And again, Hamilton's stuff still looks good. I just think the command was off. I still think Ian Hamilton can definitely be an asset out of the pen. And then it's Carlos Vargas, who was able to get the job done the night before for Seattle, does not here. Aaron Judge leads off the 8th with a 444-foot homer, just 117.7 mile per hour exit velocity to give the Yankees a 3-2 lead. As it stands now, he's tied for the major league lead in home runs with Kyle Schwarber. Again, what Judge has been doing is just ridiculous. He has a 412 batting average with a 1279 OPS. These are just numbers that are just absolutely ridiculous. Bottom of the 8th, Fernando Cruz is on, gets into a little bit of trouble, but he's able to get a double play with first and second one out. And actually, a nice turn by LeMahieu. I got to give him credit, because LeMahieu didn't play any second base last year. Now it seems like he's going to play a good amount of second base. And from Volpe to LeMahieu to Goldschmidt, they get the Speedy Moore. And then actually LeMahieu does get a single in the 9th. So LeMahieu, look, I'm not going to judge him yet. He did get a walk in this game. He did get a single. I'm not overly bullish on the chances of LeMahieu being a real impact player, but hey, this is the best opportunity that he'll have right now, considering all the injuries to second base and the third base. And then it's Luke Weaver, who comes on in a situation that I don't think Boone would have wanted to bring him into. Apparently, if it wasn't a safe situation, they wouldn't have brought him in. They would have wanted to stay away because he pitched 2 innings the night before. What does he do? He strikes out the side against his former team. 1-2-3 for Luke Weaver's 4th save of the year, and his ERA goes down to 0.45. I'm really hoping that Luke Weaver can make the All-Star game. I think that'd be great. So the Yankees win the series. They get it done. They improved to 25-18. And this was a good 4-2 trip against the A's and Mariners. No way around it. I was really hoping that they could do that. I think if they went 3-3, it wouldn't have been a disaster by any means. But the fact that they could get it done and go 4-2, that was huge. So now it sets up the Subway Series, which I am hoping to attend at least one of those games. So I'm excited for that. But it's going to be Trevor McGill versus Carlos Rodon in Game 1. Game 2 will be Griffin Canning against Clark Schmidt. And then Game 3 will be a battle of lefties on Sunday Night Baseball between David Peterson and Max Fried. So we'll see what happens. Again, Juan Soto's return is going to be the big story. How will he do? We know how he's going to be received, and it's not going to be pleasant. But this is certainly a series that I think everyone's had marked on their calendar, and it's going to go I mean, look, they all count the same, but it's going to go a long way in terms of how things feel. And the Mets are off to a really, really good start this season as well. So you couldn't really ask for a more exciting series, and hopefully the weather holds up and it'll be a fun one in the Bronx. But the Yankees will be feeling pretty good about themselves as they're coming off of a 4-2 road trip, and they just won. Aaron Judge gets it done with a big homer in the 8th inning to help give the Yankees the series win over the Seattle Mariners.